And the public hearing is on the Wastewater Facilities Plan. Gary?
Yeah, very quickly, I'm going to introduce Steve Siegel and Susan Guzwa from Tighe Bond, who have been just invaluable helping us put together this plan. We're going to be presenting the recommendations of the draft Wastewater Facilities Plan for the Water Pollution Control Plant, prepared by Tighe Bond. The recommended improvements for the collection system, pump stations, and the plant itself are noted in the report. The town will also present the sanitary service area map, which delineates the sewer service area for the town as well. So, Steve, take it away.
Thank you, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you for inviting us. Working closely with the staff from a number of departments in town, Tighe Bond has completed a detailed evaluation of the town's wastewater infrastructure. There were a number of drivers that were key to the study. One, of course, was to assure that the facility has adequate capacity to deal with the projected demand over the next 20 years. Another is to improve the efficiency, reliability, and resiliency of all of the infrastructure, most of which has been constructed more than 30 years ago. Over the course of the past 30-plus years, the Water Pollution Control Plant has had some limited improvements specifically designed to deal with changing water quality regulations. And now the Water Pollution Control Plant needs to be upgraded again as a result of DEP's issuance of a permit to the town requiring the removal of phosphorus. And lastly, one of the key drivers was to identify the needs and priorities of the collection system, pumping stations, and wastewater treatment plant, and develop a capital improvement plan designed to address those needs. So to address the issue of capacity, Tighe Bond staff met with the health district, town planners, and engineering staff, and worked together to estimate and project where the future flows would be and the amount of future flow that would be generated over the next 20-year period. We then determined whether or not additional sewering was going to be necessary to serve future areas of growth in the town, and to determine if that growth was consistent with both the town's plan of conservation and OPM's conservation and development plan. Lastly, when we compared the conservation and development plans with where the projected growth was, we worked with the town planners and engineering department and town attorney to draft a water pollution control plan and sewer service area map for adoption by the Water Pollution Control Authority. This document, or these documents, the plan and the area map, define the boundaries of the sewer service area and prescribe where additional sewers can be constructed and where they need to be avoided. And this is also a requirement of the DEP that this plan be in place for funding. So the results of the capacity analysis demonstrated that the system does generally have adequate capacity to handle both the current and projected flows and loads. There may need to be some limited sewer system expansion or augmentation in the West Queen Street and Aircraft Road area to handle the anticipated commercial industrial growth that might occur in the future. But one of the observations of the study was that the amount of infiltration and inflow entering the sewer system is excessive. And infiltration and inflow is basically clean water that enters the sewer system through cracked pipes or through sump pumps or through roof leaders. But this is essentially clean water that's making its way to the wastewater treatment plant. In fact, based on some of the field investigations that we conducted, it was determined that over half of the flow at times is clean water infiltration and inflow making its way to the plant. The benefits of reducing infiltration and inflow are many, but the biggest benefits are reducing the risks of backups into people's homes or sewer system overflows through manholes. Reducing infiltration inflow reduces the O&M costs because you don't have to pay to pump and transport and treat this flow at the wastewater plant. And importantly, it preserves the capacity of the system for real domestic and industrial commercial wastewater. There are efforts ongoing as we speak that are looking to identify the specific locations of where excessive infiltration inflow is entering the system, and a plan will be developed in the future to address how to remove those excessive flows. We also looked at the pumping stations. There are 10 pumping stations in town. The majority of them are 20 to 40 years old. And we developed a plan, a phased plan to replace those stations or upgrade those stations, or in one case, the Blatchley Road Station, abandoned the station altogether with a new gravity sewer. But because of the age of the stations being, again, 20 to 40 years old, they're all in need of some improvements. The wastewater treatment plant, however, is probably the biggest issue that is facing the town. The facility, for the most part, is over 30 years old. And modernization is needed because it's becoming increasingly difficult to find spare parts for some of the electrical equipment and process equipment. Because of the age of the equipment, it's inefficient. The processes, the pumps are aging, the drives are aging. And the risk of failure is increasing. Just a few years ago, you may recall, the anaerobic digesters failed, and that's the kind of situation we certainly don't want to have continue. So the study that we put together identified a detailed plan to address the structural, mechanical, and electrical systems that need to be renovated. The issue of the permit, of course, is a major driver. The town has a new permit from the Connecticut DEP that basically requires phosphorus to be removed, and Southington is not alone, but it's one of the communities that received a somewhat more stringent permit limit because of its point of discharge and the impact on the water body. And so the current limit that's been prescribed in your permit is 0.7 milligrams per liter or parts per million, which is an interim limit. The permit requires the community to further reduce phosphorus through this upgrade to 0.16 parts per million, or about a 75% reduction from the 0.7 number. So we evaluated a number of technologies and identified ballasted flocculation as a treatment process capable of achieving these limits, and was the most cost-effective of the processes that were considered. Looking at an aerial map, and I'm not expecting to really go through this in detail, but it does kind of present a good view of the facility. The colored tags show where new processes or piping or systems are being improved. But suffice it to say that basically all of the old equipment that's 30 plus years is ready for replacement. The electrical systems are ready for replacement, and virtually every aspect of the plant is going to be touched in some fashion. So the summary of the recommendations really are three major categories: the water pollution control plant, pumping stations, and collection system. You may recall there is a project currently underway at the plant, the so-called thickener and odor control upgrade project that's under construction, that was put in motion last year because of odors in the neighborhood, and there's a means to reduce the cost of hauling sludge off-site. That project is on track and on budget and is scheduled to be completed later this year. But the big project, the Water Pollution Control Improvement Project, including the phosphorus removal, is a 5-year program starting now, expected to take 5 years to go through the design, the approval, and the construction and startup and commissioning. And I'll outline the schedule for that in a moment. Pumping stations, there are 7 stations that need improvements. The thought was target 1 per year over the next 7 years. And the collection system is basically sound from what we saw. Again, the infiltration inflow is excessive, and that needs to be dealt with. The so-called sewer system evaluation survey, which is ongoing, is in fact the study that's going to identify the specific locations of the excessive infiltration, and then a plan can be put together to attack that. And the capacity upgrades I mentioned again in the Aircraft Road and West Queen Street area, if and when flows develop, the commercial industrial flows that might develop in that area do materialize. At that point, some additional augmentation of the sewer capacity might be needed. The design phase of the project is expected to take several years, with design starting as early as next month once DEP approval is received for funding. That 30% level of effort would be completed by May, At that point, there'd be a much better appreciation of what the costs of the constructed project would be. Not only would we be at 30% complete with the design, but a value engineering session would take place, so any ideas that might come up to reduce costs would be incorporated into the numbers. And so you could go to town referendum in November of 2016 with a pretty good number, a very good number. And then, upon approval of the referendum, the design would complete and be completed by December of 2017, with bidding in early 2018 and construction underway thereafter. The estimated cost of the water pollution control upgrade project is $46.5 million. That includes everything, engineering, construction, contingency. The Clean Water Fund through the state is, from the preliminary numbers that have been assembled, it looks like they should be offering a grant of somewhere around $15.4 million for the project, which would be repaid at a 2% loan over 20 years. So the estimated town share would be $31.1 million. And the finance director has estimated the mill rate impact at 0.6 mils, and it's expected that that would be the worst case, and the financial impact would drop after the first year somewhat. And with that, I think that is the summary, and be pleased to open it up.
The only thing I would add, thank you, Steve, is that when we laid out this schedule, the reason that it pops to 0.6 is because during the initial phases of engineering and so forth, we aren't eligible to close on the Clean Water Fund loan. So all of that interest accrues, and in the first year it pops up, and then it almost immediately goes down to below 0.5. This presentation, along with this public hearing, was one of the requirements to be done now to retain our eligibility for this kind of funding, the DEEP grant funding. And I also want to say to this council, you've been tremendously supportive of the Phosphorus Coalition of Waterbury, Meriden, Wallingford, Southington, and so forth. And as a result of those efforts, the phosphorus reduction, while we weren't able to eliminate the requirement, the phosphorus itself component of this is being reimbursed at 50% rather than the normal 30%. So those efforts were not wasted. So thanks to Tighe Bond. You've met Mike Fenoya. Mike Fenoya, this is not his first time going through something like this, so we're looking forward to his leadership through the implementation phase. And from an engineering perspective, Jim Grappone on the town engineering staff is working through that. And Susan Guzwa is with Tighe Bond, and she's been supporting Steve. So we're happy to answer any questions if there are.
And I'm sorry, I just may note that there is an action at some point that we'll need to take, which is the approval of the water pollution control plan and sewer service area map. So that is something that only the WPCA, but of course the council acting as WPCA.
But that was an oversight on my part, so I'd ask that you add something on to approve the plan.
Okay.
I thought it was just a public hearing was a requirement.
Need it on the agenda.
Sue was just pointing out that the action doesn't have to be tonight, but it does have to happen before DEP could offer a grant. The OPM has to say it's...
Want to put it on for next agenda?
Fine.
We can do that.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you very much. Jim, you all set?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that what will happen today, actually we're going to open it up, I guess, for any public comment. But with respect to any comment, we will bring that before the sewer committee for evaluation of the plan, the water pollution control plan and the service area. Once that's all incorporated and the sewer committee is happy with that, we will bring it before the council for final action.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone speaking in favor of this presentation, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Arthur Sear, 103 Berlin Avenue. As has been my habit, I keep all my paperwork from all the different meetings. And I must say that no taxpayer in this town or no sewer user wants to see a plan with a price tag of $46.5 million. But at least I understand that it's a necessary program. I would wonder, Mr. Chairman, what would ever happen if this referendum were to fail? and the taxpayers didn't approve this plan, where do we go from there? Because this is not something that is, well, maybe we need it and maybe we don't. This is something that we absolutely need. And so maybe our town attorney can tell us what would ever, heaven forbid, happen if this referendum failed. And we've had a couple of referendums fail, but those were more of a wish list thing. This is a necessity. And I think every taxpayer and every sewer rate user in this town needs to know this is your public hearing, and you can see how many of them are here. And it's not they were chased away by the cyber knights. You know, they pretty much trust the town government to do what's necessary. But, you know, heaven forbid, what would happen if, you know, this referendum were to fail? I just would like somebody to answer that in the next, I don't know, 30 or 60 days. I absolutely appreciate the fact that, my page is out of order, that we've gone for 3 different grants totaling $15 million. So as much as, you know, these numbers are staggering, you know, I much prefer seeing a $31 million price tag for the taxpayers as opposed to a $46 million price tag. So I commend everybody in every department that worked on this, from the sewer committee to the staff, because $15 million plus a $2 million or a 2% long-term loan is nothing to sneeze at. I'd like to redo my mortgage at 2%. I do have one question, and I don't know if somebody can answer it, because I keep all my paperwork. On the next page, it said potential CL&P rebates. Has anybody talked about what kind of rebates we may potentially get from CL&P to go in and change all our equipment in this 40-year-old plant and put in energy-efficient equipment? And if anybody could answer those 2 questions, I would greatly appreciate it. And like I said, thank you all for your hard work. It's the best we can do, and it's a great plan. I am thrilled that this town council and previous town councils got Tighe Bond in here to do our sewer work. They are heads and tails better than companies I used to listen to 15 years ago when we were told, oh no, just pay the nitrogen credits. It's better than putting in D-night plants. So if you could answer those 2 questions.
Yep, we'll get answers to those in a minute. Thank you, Mr. Sear. Anyone else speaking in favor of this presentation, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Last call. Anyone speaking against? Last call. Okay, I'll turn it over to the staff.
Chairman, yeah, I'll turn it over to town attorney. He can answer the question on whether or not, you know, what we do if the referendum passes or fails, and then I can answer the question on the CL&P credit. So,
Okay.
Mark.
This was a similar issue that came up when we were doing the phosphorus and nitrogen issues, is the fact that we're under the jurisdiction of the state of Connecticut. First they do, if we don't do a referendum, we don't pass a referendum, the first thing they do is fine us. When we get to a certain time period, the state can fine us. After which, if we still do not do it, the state will have jurisdiction to actually order the town of Southington for correction purposes, because we would be, in their opinion, we would be polluting a state waterway. So, to answer Mr. Sear's question, that ultimately, if the state requires us to do it, we are going to have to do it.
And if that's the worst case scenario, do we lose the grant?
Well, we wouldn't have the grant because we're not doing the program. If it fails, yeah.
So the town would be on the line for 46 million, not 31.
Very possibly. If we're ordered by the state of Connecticut to do it in a lawsuit
Worst case
situation, very
scenario.
possibly.
Okay, well, that's,
It's not an if-then statement, though. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, continue, I'm sorry.
The second piece of that was the CL&P credits. Tighe Bond is very aggressively going after every efficiency measure that they can use. Those CL&P credits are based upon how successful they are and how much we're able to reduce and become more efficient. So we're not even at 30% design yet. That number will be the direct result of the engineering efforts they're going to go through in the next couple of years. So it's a to be determined number, but I can tell you that Tighe Bond has a very successful track record of maximizing those credits. So it was one of the reasons we selected them.
This is an oddball question. Can the outflow of the sewer treatment facility generate electricity through a turbine?
Not enough head, not
Oh.
enough drop.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Dawn?
I was just going to say that it sounds then like it's incumbent upon us to definitely
do our best with regard to a public awareness campaign. And Gary, the way that you did with the road project way back when, the first one that we did, are you going to be visiting PTO and other civic group assemblies and whatnot to get the message out that, like Dr. Urillo said,
Yes.
it's imperative that we get this passed so that we don't have
If I
fines.
may, Mr. Chair, the people in Southington had the same thing issued to them 7, 8 years ago, and they understood the issue, understood what the town had to do, and overwhelmingly approved a referendum for the nitrogen. And I think we all have faith in the people in the town of Southington that they're going to be doing the right thing, because they have to do the right thing. And they did it with nitrogen. We showed them what had to be done, and like they always do, they stepped to the plate and did the right thing.
The better we do at educating them, the easier that is. So that's our goal.
And that should be any referendum. We have the calendar house coming up. I think we should be educating the public on the benefits and the positive attributes of the calendar house. So I think it should be done going forward. We did it last year for several things. Many of them passed, some of them didn't pass, but at least the people understood what they were voting on. Chris.
Just to that point, one of the ways I think we can promote both the calendar house and this project is if we maybe open the calendar house and the plant up for maybe tours. We've done that in the past before so the public can see the facility firsthand. And I think just seeing it, you'll understand why it's so critical in both cases. So
Sure.
maybe that's something else we can look into.
It's a great idea, but recognize these are a year offset. The referendum questions are a year offset. So we're imminently about to go into the prep for the calendar house.
Right.
We've got another year before that.
After this.
But I suspect that this won't be Mike's first tour.
Right.
So we'll make sure that's certainly available.
Okay.
Thank you. Jim, thank you for your department and the sewer department as well. Thank you very much. Thank you to Tighe Bond.